morning, friends, and we do mean that. Good morning to you, and thank you for starting your day with us here. I'm Brandon Walker.
Good morning. I know it's rare to see us sitting here on the desk, but we wanted to continue just remembering our good friend as we did last night. So we're happy to be here, starting your weekend Sunday morning off with you. Today I'm Brianna Boudreau. Happy to have all of you here with us.
Yeah, and so we're here. You know why we're here. We're here because we're supposed to be here, as with you remembering a pillar of our community, Eric Paulsen.
We are all still grappling with the sudden news of his death after his courageous fight with cancer. We're taking a look at his journey here at WWL and what shaped Eric into the man that we all loved and also trusted.
Paulsen first started charming the city of New Orleans when WWL TV launched the Eyewitness Morning News in the late 1970s.
We're going to go to Mary Schoenberger, who is on the West Bank.
And the city fell in love with him when he took our viewers around the world, co-hosting a weekly show called PM Magazine.
PM Magazine.
And I'm Eric Paulsen.
Now, right now, we're on a ferry crossing the English Channel on the way to France. Now, it's here when you start to realize that the 24-hour trip from London to Venice just isn't long enough. Well, when you finally do decide to go to bed, you'll find that the cabin boy has transformed your day coach into a sleeper.
Even early on, Eric was a natural at asking just the right question in just the right way to draw an answer that no one else could get.
What we see on stage, the leather, the spikes, the makeup, is that, I don't know, a part of you?
I think it's fun and everybody likes to play games. I'm not going to go and hurt anybody.
He connected with viewers in his own way, sharing personal milestones like his first solo flight piloting an airplane.
Within a few minutes, when you first start rolling down the taxiway, you can't help but feel a little confident.
And that time he carefully crossed a catwalk that is now the Mississippi River Bridge, even though he knew it was nuts.
Now, to walk on beams like this every day for your job is, to say the least, risky, but to do this for a story, this is crazy.
Eric's epic career was more than just those crazy moments. Over the years, he guided New Orleans through some of its darkest days.
I'll tell you on a personal note, some friends of mine were rescued in St. Bernard, so it was a good day.
Yes.
He was a steady pillar during Hurricane Katrina, questioning those in charge as the levees broke and the humanitarian crisis unfolded on our air.
With this breach in New Orleans we have on this levee, we're about to face real disaster in the city.
Well, it's just absolutely necessary that the Corps get more sandbags into that breach. I mean, we've got to stop it some way, somehow.
That was just one of many hurricanes and storms Eric spent hours anchoring. And Blanco was just one of many governors Paulsen interviewed over the years.
Mike Foster says he appreciates the sense of history, being inaugurated in the same building where his grandfather was inaugurated governor about a century ago.
From Mike Foster to Bobby Jindal to Governor John Bel Edwards.
You put a Democrat in the governor's mansion and all of a sudden you raise taxes.
Well, first of all, I would tell you, you've had a Republican in the governor's mansion for 8 years, and he left the largest budget deficit in the history of our state.
He also said the most important thing he has done in the past 100 days is to the Medicaid expansion. He said that'll save the state $184 million this year alone.
It became a rite of passage for Louisiana's governors to interview with Eric.
Why do you think so many people gave you that mantra of Fast Eddie? Why do you think you had that reputation?
I deserve it.
Every major election night, Eric was in the trenches for the hottest races.
Well, to say the least, it was a big night for Governor John Bel Edwards.
And a year after Congressman Steve Scalise was shot at a baseball practice, Eric traveled to Washington to see him in action.
And I know your next thing you're doing is physical therapy. You got to get going to that. you're making great progress.
I've got a, kind of a never give up attitude, and persistence has gotten me where I am today.
From congressional and state leaders to mayors, Eric Paulsen questioned them too.
Well, on that issue, and not to point fingers, but kind of pointing fingers, the Sewage and Water Board was neglected for a long time. The catch basins were neglected for a long time. There were some big mistakes made in prior administrations about what to do with the antiquated generating system that should have been upgraded and was not.
That's a fact.
Eric's interviews often made news. In fact, this interview about why relationships turn violent in New Orleans did just that.
While I was interviewing a couple of rappers, a guy who used to be in their rap group started yelling obscenities at us with taunts and threats that got so intense, I stopped the interview. But that did not stop the arguing.
Then we saw the gun and realized this could have turned deadly.
And we can't forget the time former Mayor Ray Nagin was fed up as the feds were closing in on him, and he challenged our news director to a fight in the parking lot on the air with Paulsen. Eric remained cool, as he always did.
You put my personal schedule out there. I am coming back to the station, and me and your news director are going to be outside in the parking lot having a good one-on-one.
Eric's easy on-air chemistry with his co-anchors helped stoke New Orleans' love for him, including Sally Ann Roberts, who Eric struggled to say goodbye to when she retired.
Lawrence and Lucy Marion, who I love dearly.
Then Sheba Turk and his original co-anchor, the late Andre Trevine, who passed away nearly 10 years ago. Eric told her story then.
It was chemistry. It really was. Because, and a lot of people think that we didn't like each other, but we're friends to this day. We're still friends. We've always been friends. But I'm not going to sit there and let him get away with some of the things he did, and that's what the chemistry was. I think our chemistry, it was the reason for the ratings and everything, because we just had that spark going on.
Last week we lost our dear friend and colleague Don Westbrook, and this week Andre. They were two giants in New Orleans television, and we were so lucky to have known them, and I cannot tell you how privileged I was to have called them friends.
So many of us at WWL feel the same about you, Eric.
Well said. Anchor Katie Moore, thank you for putting that together. Also, photojournalist TJ Pipitone, summing up what Eric meant to us, but showing what Eric meant to us and still means.
Yeah, and it's so fun for us to be able to look back and watch some of those stories that he did, because I got to sit next to him, as did you, and we would sit there and he would tell us about those memories, the good and the bad, and just moments in his life that he remembered. And so getting to see them, but also knowing that personal story. I loved when he was on the plane and did the
that's
so
like,
him, like you're about to take off on a
and look at, like,
solo flight, man. And he's like,
he's like, you see me, you're rolling.
Yeah.
We were also talking, of course he would love the fact that we get to sit through a bio package about him over and over and over again.
Because last night we watched it today, and I enjoy it every time. I feel like I get a piece of him that I missed each time, so it's really fun to go back and watch it, and we'll continue that through the week. But I know he's sitting there going, I hope you're liking all that.
Right, with that face, right.
Yeah, so many good things to laugh about in memories when you think of Eric. The impact of Eric's passing, of course, being felt across New Orleans, not just here in the WWL studios. In his decades serving the community, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award. We've made that face many times sitting next to him, from the Press Club of New Orleans, and was honored by the New Orleans City Council as well. In a statement, Mayor LaToya Cantrell said in part, quote, Eric Paulsen was more than just a news anchor. He was a fixture in our community and a beloved friend to many. His dedication to his craft and love for our great city were evident in every story he told. He will be deeply missed. The City Council also offered their condolences, saying, quote, the city of New Orleans is forever grateful for all that Eric gave to our city. We will keep his family in our thoughts and pray that he rests in God's perfect peace. And, as the news spread across the Crescent City in Southeast Louisiana, we are hearing from so many of you.
And thank you so much for writing us and checking
really
on
special.
us. It does mean a lot because Eric was part of everyone's lives. It's how you started your day, to see what Eric's talking about on there.
What's he
going to
do today?
Exactly. You considered him family because he was family. Here's a look at just a few of the many lives he touched.
Oh, I watched him every morning.
And in the 4 decades that Eric Paulsen spent on people's TV screens, they got to know him and came to love him. For some, it was his relationships with his co-anchors.
Miss him with Sally Ann Roberts and all the good old days, I
remember when Sheba, when he went with her. Now, I used to watch it with the two of them. They were a hoot.
Others remembered the stories Eric told and the people he sat down with, as far back as his interview with Tennessee Williams in 1981.
But he did it in such a way that he gave a certain touch to this that made it really work. And he didn't censor Tennessee Williams, but he did it just the right way.
But more than anything, it was his personality and sense of humor that kept them coming back to Channel 4 every day.
His wit, he was very, very outgoing. The jokes that he would come out with.
His charisma, his charisma. He was like he always smiled, and it's like he was always. This is the most important thing for me is for you to get you out of what you do.
And I believe he was like a real person, like genuine.
So when Southeast Louisiana heard the news of Eric's passing Saturday morning, it cut deep for so many people.
I've been hoping he was going to come back on. I'm sure we're all been wishing he'd come back on. It's a total shock.
I didn't know he had cancer. If I'd have known, I would have been praying for him, but I will pray for him now. I'll pray for him now.
And those prayers are not just for Eric, but for his wife and 3 kids, including his young son.
My heart goes out to his family. It's a terrible time, but I hope people rally around the family and give them support, because that's a sad occasion right now.
A sad occasion not just for those who knew Eric, but everyone he reached in his 40 years in their homes.
Thanks to Rachel Handley for putting that together. It's so true. My thoughts, my heart has been focused on Emmett. Since yesterday, Eric's youngest son, Emmett, would watch the show, and Eric would tell these stories about Emmett because Emmett was Eric in many ways. Just the stuff that he would say to come was like, Emmett.
Even as young as he is.
I would pass, and I love this story so much. Every time I pass a California closet, I think of Emmett and Eric because one day Emmett comes up to Eric and he goes, "Dad, when we go to California, we've got to go to get one. We got to go to those California closets." And not knowing that it was the store. And so whenever I pass one, there's one in Metairie there off Vets by Lakeside, I can't help but think about Emmett and Eric and the bond that they shared.
Yeah, it's really sweet. We're thinking of Bethany, his wife, who is such a light, and I told her this, he talked about her all the time, and all of his kids, and was so proud of John recently graduating from college, and I haven't even got to meet all of his children, but I feel like I know him because all the stories he would share. And I want to say too, because I've heard from so many people and just like messages and stuff saying how they just expected him to be back, and that is very hard for us because we did as well. We did too. But so did Eric, and it's very personal, but every time we talk to him, and his wife reiterated it when he talked to Sheba, she mentioned it to us last night, he always was focused on being back here, and I think that speaks volumes of how much he loved this city and just being here to be able to work for the people, because that was something that was motivating him in his fight with cancer, was to sit on this desk again. He was even writing out all the jokes he was going to tell about his time away. So we're heartbroken that he didn't make it back to this desk, but he will always be a part of this desk.
Most definitely. This is his desk. We're going to take a quick break. We're back after this.
Welcome back. 7:17 is the time. It's been really touching listening to everyone talk about Eric over, last night, today, into the morning. I know it's not stopped, and every one of them will quickly tell you how much he loved the music of this city. Robin Barnes, or as you may know her as the New Orleans Songbird, says no one lifted her up quite like Eric did.
Yeah, Eric had his finger on the pulse of the local music scene, to say the least. He uplifted artists, big and small.
To say that in my career I've ended up being close friends with Eric is crazy to me, because I remember growing up and my grandmother cooking in the kitchen and just telling me how much she was so in love with Eric Paulsen.
Looking through the photos of Robin and Eric, you can see just how much these two meant to each other.
Eric has definitely been one of those people that have always told me, just aim for the star. Aim from the moon, and never just give up, never just settle for what you think you're supposed to do. Go bigger. And he always pushed me to go bigger.
Now Robin Barnes is a Billboard charting artist, an award-winning vocalist, but she remembers when that was really just a dream.
And I was told by so many people in the industry that a little girl from the lower ninth ward couldn't do that. And I'll never forget, and I have a photo of us at my EP release party, and there was Eric in the crowd. And there were so many people that were like, wow, he's taking her seriously.
Barnes says it's his support and even more his friendship that made all the difference. She says Eric Paulsen feels like a home that will truly be missed.
He's always been such a big part of my life. And, you know, I always said, like, if I ever won a Grammy, I would have him and Bethany with me. And now I'm like, now I've got to win that Grammy. I will win that Grammy for Eric.
Good morning. Brandon and I were just talking about the fact that it's so special to grow up watching someone like Eric, and I feel so fortunate for having only worked with him briefly, but just in time. Can't help but think this sunrise has to be because he's watching over us now, and temperatures are beautiful out there, somewhere between the 50s and 60s on the North Shore and South Shore. So we'll continue today to warm up quickly. Our dew point values not far off of actual temperatures, and once again that's led to just a little bit of fog development across the board. We don't have a whole lot of wind to break it up. Not as widespread as yesterday morning, so if you do encounter any maybe traveling off to the west, make sure you're using those low beams. They of course will be best. We'll show you that visibility map, seen about a half-mile visibility limitation in Galliano as well as Belle Chase, and then about 1.25 miles up towards Kenner. Also a little fog developing towards Reserve, so something to keep in mind. Our hour-by-hour forecast once again takes us into the mid-80s as we approach this afternoon on both sides of the lake, so it will be hot. Make sure that you're drinking plenty of water, especially if you're out and about. There's so much going on, from the Taylor Swift festivities to Po' Boy Fest as well. Here's our forecast for tomorrow morning. Likely again a little bit of a visibility issue as that moisture increases and we continue with the humidity on the way up. So just keep that in mind. Maybe add a little extra time in your morning commute. We are going to see this surface ridge lift out a little bit, and then that upper ridge take over as we get into the rest of the week. So that means we could have a little shower opportunity heading towards Halloween, but definitely dew points on the rise and the warmth here to stay, no doubt. So expect those 80s heading into the rest of the week. We see mid 80s to eventual low 80s, a very minimal rain chance and no major concern in the tropics. This one area that we are watching has low development potential, but at this point in the season, if anything were to develop, it would likely head away from the continental United States. So some good news there. Here's your 7-day forecast.
Welcome back. 7:26 is the time. Condolences have poured in from across the metro area, from politicians to musicians to, of course, our beloved sports teams.
The Saints and Pelicans, they're both getting ready for their games today, but the teams did issue a statement about Eric, saying in part, quote, his dedication to journalism and the city of New Orleans made him one of the country's longest tenured broadcasters, and his impact on the community will not be forgotten. Eric's warm presence and commitment to sharing the stories of our city touched the hearts of many. That is true there.
Yeah, it's really nice to see so many people sharing love. And just get on social media and you'll scroll and you'll see his face pop up and some great story from someone, or you know, and it's nice to be on this healing journey with everyone.
We love you, Eric. We'll be back. Yeah. And as we take a look now at the Mississippi River, the city of New Orleans, the West Bank, the East Bank, the Crescent City connection, and the glow that is the sun.
I was going to say, just taking a minute looking at it, it's just a beautiful sunrise this morning, and it's really nice to see. So a good way to start the day. Thanks for waking up with us this morning, 7:31 on this Sunday morning. A little different for us to be here. I'm Brianna Boudreau, normally here Monday through Friday, but happy to be able to sit here with you all and, remember our friend.
Yeah, I don't know that I would be able to conceive of it any differently. We're here because we're supposed to be here. Good morning to you. I'm Brandon Walker, and we do thank you for continuing to check on us as we remember Eric, because for years, Eric worked here on this morning show with so many people, but you would wake up and say, I want to see what Sally Ann and Eric are talking about. It was one word, Sally Ann and Eric, Eric, Sally Ann.
It was just one simultaneous. She posted on Facebook that she was blessed to work with Eric, who she called an extraordinary man, and we couldn't agree more with her. Adding, Eric was a gifted journalist who could have worked anywhere in the country, but Eric fell in love with the Big Easy and its people and culture, and he loved New Orleans. And of course, she said, we loved him right back. We will remember Eric's wit and wisdom. Praying now for his wonderful wife, Bethany, and family as they go through this most difficult time. If you knew Eric, you knew he would want us to celebrate his life by living each day to the fullest as he did. We also talked with another former co-anchor of Eric's, Sheba Turk, who she's now out in Los Angeles, as we know, taking her journey there. And we talked to her about what, she wants people to know about Eric.
I do want people to remember, as much as Eric is an icon to the city of New Orleans, the city he knows as his home, the love of his life was Bethany Paulsen, and he never let you. Even when I left to go to LA and I was battling, like, what do I do with life? I love New Orleans. This is my home. How do you decide when to move up, when to stay, what to do in your journey? I always asked him, why did you stay in New Orleans? When I knew you had opportunities to do more, his answer was always Bethany. He had no regrets in life because his journey brought him to the love of his life. And I always say, that's really everything I needed to know about him. Love, as much as he was feisty and he loved to fight and he loved animals and he loved storytelling, Eric had the biggest heart. He was a big lover, and you saw that wife and his children. He was such a softie. People would probably who would cry first. Eric would cry all the time. If you brought up Bethany or kid, he was going to cry. He loved them, and I know that love lives on through them.
That's so true. And talking about Eric's relationship with children, you know what I've been thinking about as well? We had Russell on, and there's that shot of Russell coming in and seeing Eric and just holding his face, and the joy on Eric's face to be there with that little boy who learned how to speak. He learned how to speak by watching the morning show and making a connection between the names and the faces.
Yeah, I know that moment. Every time I would watch it, I would get a little teary-eyed. Yeah, it was so special because it's just that's how it is. He just disarms everyone,
right?
Whether you want it or not.
Right. And Sheba kind of touched on those hijinks. So many journalists, they've passed through the humbled halls of 1024 North Rampart Street, working with Eric, including our next guest.
Someone you might recognize. We got Norman Robinson. We know worked here at WWL TV for several years, part of more than a 30-year career in journalism.
Oh, more than several years. I will tell you.
Into the 70s and 80s, right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Eric and I started around the same time in 1977.
Tell us about that.
And just looking at Eric, it's hard to believe he was ever that young. He was ever that young, and I was ever that young, because we were in our early 20s when we started.
Playing games in the newsroom.
Absolutely, playing games in the newsroom, playing games on our news director, who was Phil Johnson at the time. It was Phil Johnson who built this incredible news team that went on to dominate this market, and in fact, had the highest news ratings of any television station in the country. And Eric, when he ascended to the morning news, brought the ratings up to the level that it was the highest television morning show in the history of local television.
He still talked about that.
Yeah, we definitely know.
I'm sure.
You're not telling us anything
Well,
new.
he used to talk about you all to me. We had a name for you youngsters. We called you TV tots. You know, Eric had a word for everything.
Right.
You know, and he and I broke in about the same time. We're in 1977 down in St. Bernard Parish. We were covering this trial at the time of the late Congressman Rick Tonry, who was a lawyer who was running for Congress, 2nd Congressional District, which is now held by Troy Carter, against Jimmy Morrow, who was a New Orleans city councilman at the time. Well, Tonry beat Morrow, and Morrow challenged the election, the outcome of the election, claiming it was fraud. So Eric and I had to sit through that debacle for about 3 months and got to know each other really well. We became good friends. We were cohorts, we were colleagues, and much later in our careers, look at me, I had hair then. I told you, it's hard to believe that I was ever that young. We became colleagues, we became cohorts, and then later in our careers, as I went to CBS, and then back here to New Orleans, the place that I call home. He and I both fell in love. We were both from...
Right, you're from Mississippi, right?
Yeah, but I was born in St. Louis.
Wow.
Which is his hometown. His hometown. So we had that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
had that in common. We used to talk about being from St. Louis all the time. But he and I sort of moved together. We had that inarticulate speech of the heart. We would see each other, we would nod, and without words, we knew that there was a bond between the both of us. And he used to call me the old man because he was guarded about his age. You know.
Oh yeah.
He never
that.
talked about it. He was like Jack Benny, the late comedian, who was popular in the 30s, 40s, and the 50s, who was always 39 every birthday. That was Eric, and he would call me the old man. So, and as it turns out, he was older than me. He's 74, and I'm 73. So,
Look at that. Look at that, Eric.
I do want to ask you, you know, you have the privilege of having had the illustrious career that you had. I mean, if you walk around and the RTA opens up its doors and you're too late and broad, and it's like, oh, it's Uncle Norman, how you doing?
There you go.
But it's a reality, it's a career in many ways that many people don't get to have anymore, and you and Eric both got to do that. So looking back on Eric's life and legacy, your legacy here in this city, what journalism means to you all, and how you all have worked to define it, what happens to our journalistic voice here in this city, considering that these are careers that people don't get a chance to have anymore, to have that perspective, to have that tenure? How do we move on?
I think we have to hearken back to what it is we are about, and that is the ethics of the First Amendment. We are the fourth estate. We are protected by the Constitution of the United States of America, which is an obligation that we have to live up to. And I think that back when we were starting, there was an understanding that we were going to be true to the First Amendment. We were not going to be partial to corporate desires, because we had a general manager at the time, Mike Early, who would say, you know, damn the mosquitoes, full speed ahead. If it was the right thing to do, then we did it. And no matter where the line of demarcations were, if it was the right thing to do, then that's the direction we moved in. No matter who was on the other side, whether it was some business person or whether it was some person who was, you know, an elitist in the community, if they were on the wrong side, then we told their story.
As it was supposed to happen.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so much for being here and sharing
thank
us
you
a
for
piece
getting
of-
me up this early in the morning.
Come anytime.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime. This is your home too. So
All right.
thank you. It was nice hearing
It's nice
about
being
Eric
with
from
the
you.
TV tots.
You know,
We'll take it.
Not for nothing.
I've heard him call some people worse. So.
Yeah, that's true. TV ties, it's like, you know, what gives? It's like, you know, not getting on 40 years old and I'm still a toddler.
I'm not, so I'll take it.
Well, I have a son who's older than you.
That's fine.
We're tots.
Right.
We've got to take a quick break, but we'll be right
it's
back.
It's like, you and Eric, get out of here.
We'll be back with a special edition of the WWL Louisiana Morning News, remembering Eric Paulsen. I'm going to call him these two now.
There we go.
Good morning on this gorgeous Sunday across New Orleans. A beautiful sunrise, and we can't help but think it's because Eric's watching over us. So grateful to have a short shared time with him here at Channel 4, especially growing up with him mentoring me before we even met. So right now, our current feels like temperatures are in the mid-50s on the North Shore. We see those 60s across South Shore locations. It's a gorgeous forecast for anything you may have planned today or into this afternoon. After lunch, though, again, it will be hot, so make sure you're drinking plenty of water. We continue with those wind speeds relatively light, but out of the north, and a little bit of fog development over to the western portion of the viewing area. Not as much as we saw yesterday, so that's in effect until 10 a.m. Remember, if you are traveling west towards Morgan City, use those low beams. We are seeing visibility limitations pump up on the map here, down towards Galliano and then in Belle Chase as well as Reserve. So it will burn off quickly as temperatures rise into the mid-70s, then eventual 80s. Once again, we'll top out about 85 into the hottest part of your day, which is traditionally 4 o'clock. So we are going to fall back next week. You're all going to be waking up a little more refreshed next Sunday morning with that additional hour of sleep. But of course, it means our days are getting shorter. So once the sun goes down, we are going to cool off a little bit more quickly. However, a warming trend is setting up as we approach the next few days. So into Halloween, it does look as though that cooler costume may be best temperature-wise and just for the effect, of course. Here's your fog forecast for tomorrow. As we continue to watch the moisture increase, we very well may see more widespread fog develop as a result of that moisture in the atmosphere. So we're essentially dominated by high pressure. We have a surface high in place right now that's keeping us nice and quiet. And then we'll move into the extended outlook with that upper ridge taking over. So a trough is working its way to us, but it's just not quite going to reach us in order to make any big temperature changes. And we're also not going to see as much dry air as we've had in place with these dew points on the rise. So a little bit muggier as we approach middle of the week, and then Halloween itself may even see a sprinkle or two around the area, but probably not going to impact trick-or-treating, so good news there. Here's our forecast with those 80s for a while longer. I know it's almost November and we're still feeling a little more summer-like out there than anything. We should be in the upper 70s for this time of year, but at least temperatures will fall off towards the lower 80s as we approach next weekend. We don't have any rain in the picture until likely midweek. At that point, even still, it will be tough to get much shower opportunity because we've been so dry. And then as far as the tropics, just one area to watch here. This is not likely going to be a concern, but we continue to see the possibility of it developing, and if it were to, which is again still not guaranteed, it would likely take a path once again out towards the Bahamas and then the open water, the open Atlantic basin. So that's just climatologically traditionally where these types of systems go by this point in the season, late October to the final season of hurricane season, the final month of hurricane season almost here. We'll see it on Friday with All Saints Day's arrival. So 10 to 20% chances of rain at best, those 80s during the afternoons, 50s and 60s in the mornings until the end of the week, and then we'll see a few 70s.
Thank you, Brooke. Actors Vatican Loki and Edward Cox spoke to us last night. Y'all might know him around these parts as Professor Carl Naval and Grand Marshal Mardi Gras. They talked about the kind of energy Eric would bring to the shows during carnival season and those beloved parade reports.
Yeah, as you mentioned.
Oh, I pulled an Eric. I stole your line.
That's so fitting, though. I love that. So we're going to hear more from them on how they are staying strong and dedicating themselves to spreading joy during this difficult time.
Aside from that, it's the relationship and the deep friendship. Sorry.
No, we understand.
That we were lucky to have with Eric was a joy.
It was professional and it was personal. It was real life with him.
And there really is, it's difficult to put into words exactly what we lost and what the city of New Orleans lost today. And we still have to all come out of it with joy for him.
That's very true. You know, it's important to remember him, and I think we're all doing a good job at that. But it's also important to just, you know, laugh, because that's what he did, and to bring the joy out of it and talk about those memories. So it's been fun, like laughing with people just about little nuances he had and little faces he would make, and you know, they said it best.
Making my groceries,
Sure.
thinking nobody's worried about me, and all of a sudden a woman comes up and says, "Are you okay?" And I thought she was. I just didn't connect that people would. And then people started coming up and hugging me and hugging me and hugging me and saying, you know, we miss Eric. We loved Eric. We're thinking about everyone at Channel 4. And I think sometimes we do our job, we're on deadlines, and you know, you're sweating outside sometimes, and you forget that we're family to people out there, and people out there are our family, and they love us.
And you know, you shared this tweet just talking about
someone else who is WWL, Meg Ferris, recalling the moment yesterday when so many of you walked up to her and comforted her in this time of need. She shared so many stories about she and Eric working together on the morning show as the primary fill-in.
Yeah, those were fun to listen to. But, you know, it's funny because you hear through everyone's stories, just, you know, Eric joke around with you and pull out, you know, some of those, I don't know. It was like a brother-sister relationship, I think, with like pretty much everyone, you know, because he just was that like little brother who was older than us, but still acted like our little brother, you know, and she talked a lot about that. And it was fun hearing some of her stories as well. But I know for her, talking about the outpouring of love for everyone, we felt it too. And so, you know, Meg said it yesterday, just thank you for that. And for us as well, it's been really nice to have people consider us in this time, because everybody is grieving this loss.
Right. We share Eric with you. As a matter of fact, Eric belongs to you. With that, we're going to regroup for a second. We're back after this.
Well, there is no doubt about it. Eric was an icon of New Orleans TV.
Yeah, and don't you forget it.
He wouldn't let you.
No. Have you heard? Eric's an icon.
Right. Oh, I know.
In 2022, he sat down with our friends over at Tipitina's to talk about his decision to stay here in New Orleans, even though there were many national opportunities that came a-knocking.
When I was doing the show PM Magazine you referred to, which was a nationally syndicated show, you got a lot of exposure. People knew who you were.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a station in Dallas, and they wanted to hire me to co-host with Lisa Gibbons for the PM Magazine in Dallas. And I was in the middle of a contract here, and Mike Early was the general manager, and he was like a father to me, and I'd given him my word, and I said, I don't break my word. They said, well, we'll double your salary, and we'll send our lawyers down to come bring you over. And I said, I just can't do it. I can't break my word to him.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't. You know, if I had left, I might have never met my wife, and you know,
we're all
got
glad
to be
you
friends
didn't
with
go.
Fats Domino and all that other stuff.
I assure you, we are all glad that you didn't go. Was there ever a dream? I know you said you wanted, when you got into it, like the dream was going to network, meant, you know, national news, everything else. Was there a dream market, city, anything that you had in mind? Was it just New York, LA?
No, and when I got PM Magazine, excuse me, I was doing the morning news here in New Orleans, and I had gotten wind that they were gonna pick up one of the franchises for the PM Magazine. PM Magazine was a show when the FCC gave over the 6:30 half hour to local markets. They wanted to have more local programming.
Yeah.
And so KPIX in San Francisco was the head, and they had Evening Magazine, and so they started a show called Evening Magazine at the 7 owned and operated markets of Westinghouse Broadcasting. And then they started franchising the thing, and by the time it got to be big, it was 212 markets.
It was it was every. Yeah,
it was huge.
Yeah.
So then Mike Early had called me up, and he said he wanted me to do PM Magazine, and I had a job offer in my hometown of St. Louis, and he said, you know, Eric, you could go there and fall on your butt. And I said, well, yeah, but I could go there back to my hometown. It's a much bigger market. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, this will be the best job you ever had. And I said, okay, I trust you. And best job I ever had.
You know what's interesting? When Nicole and Todd, our news director and general manager, first began to talk to me about the idea of coming back here, and it was capital N, capital O for me. And Nicole said, well, let's meet with Eric. And so I met with Eric, we had coffee, and that's what he said to me. And it was, you know, this would be the best job of your life if you took it. And it was opposite for me and for us, coming from a bigger city to come back home and thinking, well, I don't know. And he just said, just give it a try, and I guarantee you, you're going to love it.
Yeah, we had a similar discussion. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow morning where we continue to remember our good friend, Eric Paulsen.